Hello, welcome to Moments That Touch. Sit back and relax because the best story is about to begin.
Millionaire CEO doesn't believe it when he sees a little girl replacing her mother for a job. In March 2019, 5-year-old Emma Chan did something that would change 3 lives forever. But it wasn't until investigators looked deeper that they discovered the devastating truth about why a child so young felt she had no other choice. Margaret Chan woke to fire coursing through her veins. The apartment's peeling walls spun as she reached for the thermometer, 108 graus de fever. Of all days, why today? The interview at Hartwell Technologies was at no dam anha. Her only chance. Mommy, Emma stood in the doorway, already. Dressed in her school uniform, backpack ready, always ready for a 5-year-old. I'm okay, sweetheart. The lab burned worse than the fever. Margaret forced herself upright. Immediately swaying, the portfolio she'd spent weeks perfecting sat on the kitchen table. Mocking her, she dialed Hartwell's number with trembling fingers. I need to reschedule my interview. I'm very ill. I'm sorry. The secretary's voice was arctic. Mr. Hartwell has a strict policy. No shows, no reschedules. The position will be filled today. The phone slipped from Margaret's hand. 3 years. Since Stanford. 3 years of cleaning offices, delivering food, studying code at the library between shifts. This interview was supposed to change everything. Emma watched her mother crumble onto the couch, clutching the portfolio like a lifeline. Tears mixed with fever sweat. It's okay, Mommy. You'll find another. There is no other. Margaret's sob erupted. Nobody wants a dropout single mom. Nobody wants. She buried her face in her hands. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm failing you. Emma approached slowly. The way she learned to when adults broke, she touched her mother's burning forehead with small, cool fingers. You never fail me, Mommy. Never. Margaret pulled her close. This child who'd grown wise too young, who ate cereal for dinner without complaint, who pretended not to notice when Mommy skipped meals, who never asked why other kids had daddies and houses and cars that worked. Take your medicine, Emma instructed, already fetching the water glass. She watched Margaret swallow the pills, then tucked the thin blanket around her. Sleep now. Everything will be okay. Margaret's eyes closed, fever and medication pulling her under. She didn't see Emma pick up the portfolio, didn't see her daughter study the address circled in red, Hartwell Technologies, Sala Quattro Mill, didn't see the decision, crystallized in green eyes that held too much understanding. Emma Chan moved through their tiny apartment with purpose. She removed her school uniform, hanging it carefully from the closet's back corner. She retrieved her only nice dress, blue with gold stars, saved for special occasions that never came. Her mother had found it at Goodwill, spent precious dollars, because every princess needs one beautiful dress. Today, Emma wasn't playing princess. She was saving her mother. She brushed her black hair until it shone, tying it with a ribbon from last Christmas, slipped the portfolio into her purple backpack, the weight making her small frame tilt, counted the bus fare twice, exact change. No waste dot at the door. She looked back. Margaret slept fitfully, murmuring about second chances. Emma kissed her fingertips, pressed them to her mother's fevered cheek. I'll fix it, Mommy. I promise. She left a note in careful kindergarten printing, went to help. Back soon. Love, Emma. The apartment door clicked shut. In the kitchen, Margaret's phone buzzed with a text from the babysitter. Where's Emma? She never arrived, but Margaret slept on, unaware her 5-year-old daughter was crossing the city alone, carrying a portfolio that weighed more than dreams. It carried their entire future. Later, social workers would ask how a child so young navigated public transit, understood corporate hierarchy, made decisions with such clarity. They'd investigate, probe, search for signs of neglect or abuse. They'd find only love. Desperate, fierce. Love between a mother who'd sacrificed everything and a daughter who learned early that sometimes love means taking impossible action, but that understanding would come later. Now, Emma Chan stood at a bus stop in her blue dress, portfolio clutched tight, about to walk into Hartwell Technologies and shatter every protocol James Hartwell had built around his carefully controlled world. The surveillance footage would later reveal what no one could explain, how Emma Chan navigated the city with precision of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. But Dr. Sarah Winters, the child psychologist assigned to the case, noticed something else in those grainy images. the way Emma's lips moved constantly, as if in conversation with someone who wasn't there. Emma Chan had been different since birth. Margaret knew, but never spoke of it, the way her infant daughter's eyes tracked things that weren't there, how she laughed at empty corners, reached for invisible hands, imaginary friends the pediatrician dismissed. She'll grow out of it, she. HAD in single quotes T. Now, sitting on the crosstown bus, Emma whispered to the empty seat beside her. I know, but Mommy needs help. Pause. Yes, like you helped me during the bad fever. Another pause. The tall building with all the glass, where important people decide things. The elderly woman across the aisle shifted uncomfortably. Emma noticed and fell silent, but her fingers kept tapping against the portfolio, Morse code patterns that spelled words no. 5-year-old should know. Sacrifice, redemption, destiny. Downtown Seattle rushed past the windows. Emma had never been this far from home, yet she moved with eerie certainty. At Madison Street, she stood before the doors open. At the transfer point, she knew which platform, without checking signs. The portfolio grew heavier with each step, but she never faltered. Inside her backpack, tucked between a juice box and broken crayons, lay something else, a business card she'd found in her mother's old textbook. James Hartwell, future CEO, scrawled in confident handwriting with a phone number crossed out. Below it, in different ink, if you ever need anything. Emma had memorized the number, had tried calling once when Mommy cried all night about rent. A woman answered, that number's been disconnected for 8 years, sweetie. But Emma kept the card, kept the promise it represented. The Hartwell Technologies building pierced the sky. Like a glass needle, Emma stood at its base, neck craned, back, counting floors. 42, she whispered, perfect number. She didn't know why she knew that. Many things lived in her head without explanation, languages she'd never studied, mathematics beyond kindergarten, the strange certainty that today would change everything. Security guards flanked the entrance. Emma straightened her blue dress, held the portfolio like a shield, and walked between them with the confidence of someone who belonged. They glanced down, amused by the tiny professional, and waved her through. The lobby overwhelmed, marble and chrome and the smell of expensive coffee. Adults moved in predetermined patterns, badges swinging, phones pressed to ears. None noticed the child who shouldn't be there. Or perhaps they noticed and looked away, some primitive part of their brains warning them not to interfere. Emma approached reception, where Catherine Mills was sorting mail. The desk towered above Emma's head. She tried jumping. No use. Dragged a leather chair from the waiting area, its weight making her grunt. Climbed up. Portfolio balanced precariously. Excuse me. Catherine looked up, expecting to see an adult. Found only empty air. Then looked down. Emma stood on the chair in her star-covered dress, holding the portfolio with both hands. I'm here for the 9 o'clock interview. Catherine's coffee cup stopped midway to her lips. I'm sorry. What? The interview. For Margaret Chan. Emma placed the portfolio on the marble with reverent care. She's sick with fever, so I came instead. Sweetie, how old are you? 5 3/4. Emma's green eyes held Catherine's without blinking. Old enough to know Mommy cries when she thinks I'm sleeping. Old enough to see her skip dinner so I can eat. Old enough to understand this interview is our last chance. Catherine set down her cup with trembling hands. Something in the child's voice, in her stillness, in the way shadows seemed to bend around her. Wait here, Catherine managed. Don't move. She speed-walked to the executive elevator. Mind racing, Mr. Hartwell would fire her for interrupting his morning. But those eyes, that voice, the child who spoke like an old soul wearing a tiny body. In her purple backpack, Emma's juice box leaked slowly over homework sheets. She didn't notice. She was listening to the whispers only she could hear, preparing for the conversation that would reshape 3 lives. Yes, she murmured, to the empty air. I remember what you taught me, about seeing people's true faces, about knowing when it's time to act. The elevator chimed. Catherine emerged, face pale but determined. Behind her, 3 executives in identical suits, and behind them, moving with predatory grace despite his shock. James Hartwell, the man whose name lived on a faded business card, the man who made a promise 8 years ago to a pregnant girl at Stanford, never knowing she'd kept it, never knowing her daughter would come to collect. The security footage told one story. Emma Chan's journey told another. Between seat Equar and EC Dom Anha when she left the apartment, and oito y cincuenta hechos da manhã when she entered Hartwell Technologies. 43 surveillance cameras captured fragments of impossibility. Bus 47. 7:52 in the morning, Emma pays exact fare while the driver argues with a passenger about routes. She whispers something. The driver stops mid-sentence. Blinks answers a detour that takes them directly past Hartwell Technologies. No one questions it. Transfer station, 8:11 a.m. A homeless veteran watches Emma struggle with the portfolio. He approaches, cameras show him speaking, but Emma responds before his lips finish moving. He nods, escorts her to the correct platform, salutes, and walks away crying later. He'll tell police, "She knew my daughter's name, my daughter who died in Afghanistan." How did she know? Downtown platform, 8:28 a.m. Emma sits between a Korean grandmother and a tech worker. She speaks to the grandmother in perfect Korean, a language Margaret doesn't know. The grandmother gasps, clutches Emma's hand, presses something into her palm. The tech worker's phone captures partial audio. "Your son forgives you. He's waiting." The cherry blossoms. The grandmother exits at the next stop. Decades of guilt lifted from her shoulders. Financial district, 8:41 a.m. Emma navigates construction barriers that weren't there yesterday. Workers will swear the street was clear that morning, but video proves otherwise. She walks through spaces too narrow for adults, following a path that seems designed specifically for a 5-year-old carrying precious cargo. Outside Hartwell Technologies, 8:49 a.m. Emma stops abruptly. Across the street, a woman in a business suit watches from a coffee shop window. Their eyes meet. The woman, Dr. Sarah Winters, though Emma doesn't know this yet, feels her breath catch. She'll later write in her report, "Subject appeared to recognize me, though we'd never met. Mouthed what looked like not yet before entering the building." But the strangest footage comes from inside the portfolio itself. Margaret's work was brilliant. Algorithms that solve problems tech giants had struggled with for years. But between the pages, investigators would find Emma's additions. Crayon drawings that looked like childish scribbles until Mid's quantum computing department recognized them as theoretical equations. Equations that shouldn't exist yet. Equations that solved problems James Hartwell didn't know he had. How? Dr. Winters would ask Emma weeks later. "The quiet people told me," Emma would answer, coloring carefully inside the lines. "They've been teaching me since before I was born. They said Mommy needed help, so they helped me help her." Who are the quiet people? Emma. But Emma would just smile and return to her coloring, drawing patterns that hurt to look at directly. Fractal geometries that whispered of spaces between spaces, of knowledge flowing backward through time, of love so fierce it bent reality around a 5-year-old girl. Now, standing in the Hartwell Technologies lobby, Emma adjusted her backpack. Straps, the juice box had leaked through, leaving purple stains on her dress. She didn't care. The portfolio mattered. The mission mattered. The whispers in her head grew louder, preparing her for what came next. "He's broken," they told her, "like your mother, like you would have been. Show him the pattern. Show him how. Broken things can be beautiful when they choose each other." Catherine returned with the executives. Emma memorized their faces, though she already knew their names, their fears, their secret hopes. The whispers had told her everything during the bus ride. CFO Martin Webb, whose daughter won't speak to him. CTO Lisa Park, who builds walls of code around her heart. Head of HR David Kim, who sees potential in everyone but himself. And behind them, James Hartwell. Emma had seen his photo once, in an old Stanford yearbook her mother hid under the bed. But the whispers had shown her more. The boy in foster care drawing business plans on napkins. The teenager teaching himself to code on library computers. The young man making promises he didn't know how to keep. "Mr. Hartwell," Emma said, her child's voice carrying impossible authority, "I've been waiting for you." The executives exchanged glances. James stepped forward, his face a careful mask that didn't quite hide his confusion. "I believe you have me at a disadvantage, Miss Chen, Emma Chen." She lifted the portfolio, arms shaking with its weight, but never dropping it. "I brought my Mommy's interview. She's sick with fever, but that's okay. The quiet people said it had to be today. Had to be me." Behind her, shadows bent strangely, the marble reflected lights that weren't there. And in James Hartwell's chest, something long frozen began to crack. The interview that would change everything was about to begin. The executive conference room of Hartwell Technologies was designed to intimidate. Glass walls overlook Seattle's skyline, making visitors feel suspended in air. The table, a single piece of Brazilian rosewood, had witnessed billion-dollar deals and career-ending terminations. Now it hosted something unprecedented, a 5-year-old girl who made reality hiccup. Security Chief Rosa Martinez reviewed the footage for the third time. Sir, she shouldn't have been able to enter. Every protocol failed simultaneously. Badges malfunction. Guards experienced temporary confusion in the elevators. She paused. The executive elevator opened for her. It's biometric locked. James studied the screen where Emma sat, swinging her legs. The portfolio pristine on the table before her. Show me the thermal imaging. Rosa hesitated. That's what I wanted to discuss. The thermal shows. She pulled up the image. Emma appeared normal, but around her, the air itself seemed alive. Heat signatures that shouldn't exist. Patterns that resembled neural networks. Dr. Lisa Park whispered. The air around her looked like active synapses. That's impossible. David Kim protested. So is a 5-year-old bypassing military-grade security. Rosa countered. James felt a migraine building. The same migraine he'd had 8 years ago. The night he'd written his number on a business card for a pregnant girl at Stanford. The night something had whispered that she mattered, that the baby mattered, that someday. Enough, he commanded. I'll speak with her, alone. Sir, that's not advisable, alone. They filed out reluctantly. James straightened his tie, a gesture that usually armored him for battle. Today it felt like preparing for something else. Entirely. He entered the conference room. Emma looked up from her coloring. She'd found paper somewhere, was drawing spirals that seemed to move. You're scared, she observed. The quiet people said you would be. It's okay. I'm scared too. The quiet people. James sat carefully, maintaining distance. They've always been here, in the spaces between seconds, in the decisions unmade. Emma continued coloring. They remember things, like how you met my mommy, like the promise you broke. James's blood chilled. I don't know your mother. Emma smiled sadly, the expression too ancient for her face. Margaret Chen, Stanford, 2011. You were teaching assistant for advanced algorithms. She was brilliant. You were brilliant. Together you were. She paused, searching for words. Inevitable, until you got scared. The migraine exploded. With it, memories he'd buried. Margaret Chen, the only person who'd ever made him feel less alone. The night she told him about the pregnancy, his panic, the scholarship to admit that meant escape, the cowardice disguised as ambition. How do you know this? The quiet people remember everything, every choice, every path not taken. Emma pulled out the faded business card. You wrote this? If you ever need anything, did you mean it? James stared at his younger self's handwriting. I was 22. I didn't know what I meant. The quiet people say that's not true. You meant it. You just got lost. Emma opened the portfolio with reverent care. Mommy got lost too, but she had me to anchor her. You built all this. She gestured at the glass empire beyond. But you're still floating. She spread out Margaret's work, algorithms that made James's breath catch, solutions elegant enough to make him weep. But between them, Emma's additions, impossible mathematics, profit projections that accounted for variables that shouldn't be quantifiable, employee happiness, social impact, the weight of ethical choices. She taught herself all this while cleaning your offices at night, while delivering food to your employees, while you built walls of glass and never looked down. No accusation in Emma's voice, just fact. The quiet people kept offering to help her forget you, but she said no, said the pain was worth it because it gave her me. James's hands shook as he traced the equations. In Margaret's notes, he found it, references to their old conversations. Building on theorems they discovered together, she continued their work alone, surpassing anything he'd achieved with all his resources. Why didn't she ever contact you? She tried. Your people said you don't take calls from nobodies. Emma's green eyes held his. But I'm not nobody. I'm Emma Chan. I'm 5 3/4. And I'm here to collect on a promise. The air in the room shifted. The glass walls reflected not Seattle's skyline, but something else, branching. Possibilities multiplying. The weight of choices made and unmade. In that moment, James Hartwell saw himself clearly, successful, empty, haunted by the family he'd abandoned before it could form. What do you want? Emma smiled, and for the first time, looked truly like the child she was. Give mommy the job. Let her show you what brilliance plus love can build. Let us be the family the quiet people say we should have been. And if I say, no, the lights flickered, the temperature dropped, Emma's expression didn't change, but something vast and patient looked out through her eyes. Then you'll keep building your glass empire. It will survive without you, but the quiet people will. Remember, and someday, when you're old and alone in your tower, you'll remember to James Hartwell, who negotiated with Fortune 500 CEOs without blinking, found himself undone by a 5-year-old certainty. When can your mother start? James Hartwell had built his empire on control. Every meeting scripted, every outcome calculated. But sitting across from Emma Chen shattered 34 years of carefully constructed armor. The worst part, the building itself seemed to conspire with her. Your walls are whispering, Emma said conversationally, still coloring. Her latest drawings show the conference room. But wrong, the angles hurt to follow. The perspective existed. In too many dimensions, they remember everyone who cried here. Fired people, broken dreams. The glass absorbed it all. As if responding, the smart glass walls flickered. For a heartbeat, James saw them, ghostly imprints of every life he carelessly destroyed in pursuit of efficiency. Then normality reasserted itself, leaving him gasping. That's not possible. Lots of things aren't possible. Emma pulled out a juice box, sipped thoughtfully. Like how you've been dreaming about my mommy every night for 8 years. The quiet people show me sometimes when you call her name. James's facade cracked. How? Margaret Rose Chan, born April 15th, loves lavender tea, hums when coding, bites her lip when thinking. Emma recited facts like poetry. You remember everything. Built this empire hoping she'd notice, but she was too busy surviving. From the portfolio, Emma extracted a photograph. James recognized it instantly, the Stanford coding competition where they'd met. But this copy was different. Worn soft from handling, tear-stained, precious. She kept it, Emma explained, under her pillow. Tells me stories about the brilliant boy who saw patterns in everything. Never mentions you left. Just says you had important things to do. She doesn't know what really happened. That you were scared. That your foster dad hit you for being weak. That you thought love meant vulnerability. Emma's words cut with surgical precision. She knows. Still chose to remember the good. The migraine was spreading. With it came visions, not memories, but possibilities. Margaret finishing her degree. Their wedding in the campus chapel. Emma born into love instead of abandonment. The company they built together, brilliant and ethical and... Stop, James gasped. Whatever you're doing, not me. Them, the quiet people want you to see. Emma's coloring never paused. Every choice creates echoes, other timelines where you stayed. Where she found you, where I grew up calling you daddy instead of staring at empty space. The conference room's temperature plummeted. Frost spread across the smart glass despite the climate control. In the frost, equations wrote themselves, probability calculations showing how one coward's choice rippled outward, damaging lives in exponential patterns. I'll give her the job, James said desperately. Whatever she wants, just make this stop. Can't stop truth, Emma said simply, but we can choose different starting now. She looked up from her coloring, and her eyes held compassion to vast for any child. Mommy says broken people can choose to be beautiful, like sea glass, tumbled smooth by pain. James found himself on his knees. When had he moved, Emma stood before him, small hand on his shoulder. Where she touched, warmth spread, not heat, but the absence of the cold he carried for 8 years. The quiet people have a message. Emma whispered, your birth mother didn't abandon you. She died protecting you. Hid you from your father because he would have killed you. Just like you tried to protect us by leaving. The words destroyed him. 3 or 4 years of believing he was unwanted, worthless, disposable, gone in an instant, replaced by truth that, her worse, he'd been loved, had always been loved, had thrown away love because he couldn't recognize it. How do I fix this? Emma returned to the table, pulled out more papers. Not Margaret's work, her own. Crayon drawings that showed possible futures, James and Margaret working side by side, Emma with 2 parents at school events. A company that put humanity before profit. Simple dreams made revolutionary by their absence in his current life. Start by calling mommy. She's awake now, scared I'm lost. Emma pulled out a cell phone that shouldn't exist. James recognized it as his personal device, biometric locked, supposedly in his office safe. I already typed the number. With trembling fingers, James took the phone. Margaret answered on the first ring. Emma, baby, where are you? I'm so worried, Miss Chen. James's voice cracked. This is James Hartwell. Your daughter is safe. She's extraordinary, like her mother. Silence. Then, James, a whisper. 8 years collapsed into nothing. Is this real? I have your portfolio. Your work is brilliant. The job is yours if... I don't care about the job. Margaret's voice broke. Is Emma really okay? She's all I have. If something happened, she's perfect. James looked at Emma, who was drawing their family portrait with impossible accuracy. She's showing me what I threw away. What we could still have, if you let me try. Through the phone, he heard Margaret crying. Not sadness, release, 8 years of carrying everything alone, finally allowed to share the weight. Mommy. Emma took the phone. The quiet people say it's time. Can you come here? Daddy wants to meet us properly this time. The word daddy echoed in the glass room. The frost melted. The ghostly imprints faded. What remained was just a man, a child, and the possibility of redemption. Bring your fever medicine, Emma added practically. And with a blue dress, Daddy always liked you in blue. As they waited for Margaret, Emma showed James her final drawing, 3 figures holding hands, surrounded by equations that described love in mathematical terms. Above them, barely visible, the quiet people watched and smiled. The empire of glass was about to become something more. The 43 minutes between Emma's call and Margaret's arrival would later be classified in the building security logs as temporal anomaly 2019C. Clocks ran backward. Elevators arrived before being called. The coffee maker in the break room produced tea that tasted like memories. Emma sat cross-legged on a conference table, having abandoned chairs as to far from the truth. Around her, the portfolio papers had arranged themselves in patterns that hurt to follow. Financial projections bleeding into childhood drawings. Algorithms becoming lullabies. Your mother, James said carefully. How long has she known about the quiet people? She doesn't. Emma peeled her juice box's straw wrapper, folding it into impossible origami. Mommy thinks I'm imaginative, says all kids have invisible friends. But she gets scared sometimes, when I know things, when I fix things that shouldn't be fixable. Like what? The landlord's heart attack. I made him sit down before it happened. The bus crash we didn't take because I threw up that morning. She smiled sadly. Mommy thinks we're lucky. But luck is just patterns too small for most people to see. James watched the child, who carried universe-weight wisdom in a frame that probably weighed 40 pounds soaking wet. Why reveal yourself? To me, why now? Because the patterns are converging. Today, this minute. Emma pointed to the frost reforming on the windows, this time showing equations. See, probability collapse. If Mommy doesn't get this job, she takes the night shift at the chemical plant. There's an accident in 6 months. She dies saving others. I go into foster care. You build higher walls until your heart calcifies completely. Everyone loses. The casual prediction of catastrophe chilled more than the dropping temperature. You're certain. The quiet people showed me all the endings. This is the only path where we all survive whole. Emma tilted her head, listening to silence. Oh, Mommy's in the elevator. She convinced someone to let her up. She's scared and brave and wearing the blue dress from graduation even though it's too loose now. Because she doesn't eat enough. James stood, pacing. 34 years of emotional armor couldn't process this. A daughter who might not be entirely human. The woman he'd abandoned. Climbing his tower. The weight of choices unmade crushing his chest. I don't know how to be a father. Neither did the men who raised you, but you're not them. Emma hopped off the table, walked to him with preternatural grace. The quiet people say trauma is a pattern that repeats until someone chooses differently. You can choose differently. What if I fail? What if I hurt you both? Emma took his hand. Where she touched, visions flooded not the might-have-beens. This time, but the will-base. Teaching Emma to code, dancing with Margaret at their wedding. Family dinners where laughter replaced silence. Simple moments made precious by their previous absence. Failure is data. Emma quoted his own business philosophy back at him. But never trying is the only real mistake. The elevator chimed through the glass walls. They saw Margaret emerge. 8 years had carved beauty into something deep resilience. Grace under impossible pressure, love that endured abandonment. She wore the blue graduation dress he remembered, but her eyes held new shadows. She's magnificent. James breathed. Yes, Emma agreed. Broken people who choose beauty usually are. Margaret saw them through the glass her daughter perched impossibly high, holding hands with the man who'd shattered her world. Her expression cycled through shock, anger, fear, before settling on the only thing that mattered. Emma was safe. She entered like a storm wrapped in silk. Emma Chan, you do not leave the house without. She stopped, seeing their joined hands, the scattered papers, the frost that shouldn't exist. What's happening here? The patterns are converging. Mommy, Emma said simply, it's time for truth. Margaret's eyes found James. 8 years collapsed into nothing. She saw him clearly older, harder, successful in every way that didn't matter, and broken, so thoroughly broken that it called to her own shattered places. Hello, Margaret. He managed. You look terrible, she said, then flushed. I mean, I look like someone who built an empire on cowardice. You look. He swallowed. You look like someone who built the universe on love. Emma tugged them both toward the table. Sit. We have exactly 23 minutes before the board meeting. Daddy needs to see your real work. The stuff you hide under your mattress, Emma. Margaret's face burned. How do you? Quiet people, Emma and James said in unison, then stared at each other. Margaret sank into a chair. I think I need someone to explain everything, starting with why my 5-year-old is calling the man who abandoned us daddy. Emma climbed into her mother's lap, suddenly looking exactly as young as she was. Because that's who he is, who he's always been. We just needed the right moment to remember. The conference room held its breath. 3 broken people sat at a table worth more than most people's houses, while reality gently rearranged itself around a child who saw between seconds. 23 minutes to change 3 lives. 23 minutes to rewrite 8 years of pain. 23 minutes for the quiet people to show them what love looked like when it refused to die. The timer started now. 20-3 minutes. The conference room smart glass had turned opaque without anyone touching the controls, creating a bubble outside normal time. Margaret held Emma tighter, her daughter's small body the only anchor in a reality suddenly unmoored. Start from the beginning, Margaret demanded, her voice steady despite the tears tracking down her cheeks. 8 years of silence, and now. My daughter calls you. She couldn't finish. James pulled up his sleeve, revealing scars she'd never seen. Precise cuts, self-inflicted, each marking a day in the first year after he'd run. I tried to come back 17 times, got as far as your door once. Heard you singing to her through the walls. His voice cracked. You sounded happy, happier than you'd ever been with me. Happy. Margaret's laugh was broken glass. I was singing so I wouldn't scream, so the neighbors wouldn't hear me crying, so Emma would think the world was beautiful even though her father wasn't brave enough to stay. James met her eyes. I know. The quiet people show me every night, every path I didn't take, every moment I missed. Margaret stiffened. You hear them too. The admission hung between them. Emma looked up at her mother with ancient eyes. You never told me, Mommy. I thought I was going insane. Margaret's whisper barely carried. After you left, I'd hear whispers, showing me futures where you stayed, where Emma had a father. I took pills to make them stop, but they don't stop. James and Emma said in unison. The conference room's temperature normalized. Outside the opaque glass, shadows moved, the board members gathering for the meeting that would determine Hartwell. Technology's future. They couldn't see it, but Emma watched them with unfocused eyes. 17 minutes remaining, she announced. Mr. Davidson wants to force you out. Daddy says you're unstable. Has security footage of you talking to empty rooms. James laughed bitterly. I probably am unstable. Building an empire on guilt does that. Margaret studied him, really looked for the first time, saw the exhaustion beneath the success. The way he held himself like he expected punishment. The desk drawer he kept glancing at. The one Emma was already opening with tiny fingers. No, sweetheart, don't. But Emma had already pulled out the contents, hundreds of photos, printed from security cameras and social media. Margaret at the grocery store, Emma's first day of preschool, birthday parties viewed from a distance, Christmas mornings through windows. You've been watching us. Margaret's voice was dangerous. Protecting, James corrected. Do you remember? The break-in 3 years ago, the one where nothing was taken. Margaret's blood chilled. The police said it was random. It wasn't. Someone figured out Emma existed, wanted to use her as leverage against me. His hands clenched. I handled it quietly, like I handled the gang that tried to recruit the teenage boys on your block, like I handled your landlord when he wanted to evict you for missing rent. That was you. The anonymous payments, the suddenly friendly landlord. Margaret stared. James, that's creepy. Stalkerish. I know. He gestured helplessly. But what? Was the alternative? Show up after years of silence? Disrupt the life you built? I forfeited that right when I ran. Emma climbed onto the table, standing between her parents like a tiny mediator. The quiet people say you're both right and both wrong, but mostly just scared. She pulled out more papers, not from the portfolio this time, but from inside her. Dress, documents that shouldn't exist. Emma, where did you? The space between seconds has lots of useful things. She spread them out. Legal documents, DNA tests, financial records, and at the bottom, a marriage certificate dated 8 years ago, signed by both of them in what looked like their handwriting. Margaret gasped. That's impossible. We never, in another timeline, you did. 3 days before I was born. Daddy, stayed. You finished Stanford together, built the company as partners. Emma traced the signatures with one small finger. The quiet people kept it. Said you might need proof that some choices echo forever. The smart glass began to clear. The board members were taking their seats. James looked at the marriage certificate. From another timeline, at the woman he loved and left, at the impossible child who bridged realities. 10 minutes, Emma announced. Decision time. Do we continue the path where everyone loses, or choose the echo where love wins? Margaret clutched the certificate that was both real and not real. Outside, Seattle's skyline stretched toward a future that suddenly felt malleable. What are you proposing? She asked James. But it was Emma who answered, her voice carrying harmonics. Of the space between seconds, that we stop pretending broken things can't be beautiful. That we show the board what Hartwell Technologies could become with heart and code combined. That we be the family we already are in every timeline, but this one. The conference room door opened. Davidson entered. Volpine smiled sharp. James, I see you're conducting personal business during board time. His eyes found Margaret and Emma. Dismiss them. How unprofessional. Emma tilted her head, studying him. You're scared to, she observed, but of different things. The quiet people know about the money you're stealing. They're keeping records. Davidson's face went white. Behind him, board members filed in, sensing blood in the water. 7 minutes. Time for the patterns to converge completely. The boardroom filled with sharks disguised as directors. Davidson took his seat, knuckles white as he gripped his portfolio. The theft Emma mentioned, $3.7 million siphoned through shell companies, suddenly felt like a noose tightening. How did the child know? Ladies and gentlemen, James began, but Emma climbed onto the conference table. Her blue dress with stars catching the light like constellations. Wait, she said. At 14, board members froze, not metaphorically, literally. Margaret gasped as time stuttered around her daughter. Coffee cups paused mid-lift. Davidson's sneer hung half-formed. Only James and Margaret remained unfrozen, caught in Emma's bubble of altered time. The quiet people need to show you something, Emma explained, as if freezing board members was perfectly normal, about what Hartwell Technologies really is, what it was meant to be. The air shimmered. The conference room walls became transparent, showing not Seattle, but possibility itself. In the center, a younger James and Margaret worked side by side, code flowing between them like poetry. Their company smaller, warmer, revolutionary in its ethics. The other timeline, Margaret breathed. Where you stayed. Where we built something beautiful. James corrected. Look at the products. They watched their alternate selves create technology that healed rather than exploited. Apps that detected depression and connected people to help. AI that protected children online. Code that put humanity before profit. And in that timeline, Emma, older, confident, already showing her parents' brilliance, led a youth division that solved problems adults couldn't see. This is what Davidson fears, Emma said. Companies with conscience make his kind extinct. The vision shifted. Now they saw the current timeline's future without intervention. Hartwell Technologies grew monstrous, consuming smaller companies, destroying lives for profit margins. James, alone in his tower, becoming everything he'd hated. Margaret, gone in the chemical plant accident Emma had predicted, and Emma herself. No, Margaret choked, seeing her daughter in foster care. Her light dimmed, the quiet people's voices fading without love to anchor them. 5 minutes until time resumes, Emma announced. We can change tracks, but it requires truth. She pulled out a single sheet of paper, not from her backpack or portfolio, but from the air itself. A contract written in languages that hurt to read, signed by entities that existed between heartbeats. The quiet people offer a bargain. Dad admits everything to the board. Mom presents her real work. I show them what children can see when adults remember wonder. Emma's green eyes held galaxies. In exchange, the timelines merge. Not completely, that would break causality, but enough. The wisdom of the path not taken bleeds through. What's the cost? James asked. Because there was always a cost. You have to feel it, all of it. Every moment of pain you caused by leaving, every tear Mom cried, every time I reached for a father who wasn't there. Emma's voice carried no judgment, only truth. The quiet people say redemption requires full accounting, without hesitation. James reached for the contract. Where do I sign? No. Margaret grabbed his hand. We do this together. I'm not innocent either. I could have looked for you, could have swallowed my pride. Let my hurt become walls. Emma grew up inside. They signed together, their names intertwining on paper that existed in no single reality. The moment ink touched surface, the frozen board members began moving in slow motion, like film advancing frame by frame. But something else happened. James cried out, doubling over as 8 years of Margaret's pain flooded through him. Every lonely night, every skipped meal, every moment of single parenthood's crushing weight. He felt it all, experienced it all, became it all. Margaret gasped as James's terror filled her. The foster homes, the belief that love meant abandonment, the panic that made him run, the 17 times he'd almost returned, the self-hatred that built an empire as penance. And Emma brave. Impossible. Emma held them both as they shattered and reformed. The quiet people's voices rose to a crescendo, showing them not just pain, but possibility. Love wasn't the absence of hurt, but the choice to heal together. 1 minute, Emma whispered. When time resumes, you'll remember both timelines. Use that wisdom. Show them what we could build. The board members' movements accelerated. Davidson's sneer completed itself. Coffee reached lips. Reality snapped back to normal speed, but nothing was normal anymore. James stood, tears still wet on his face, but spine straight. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to tell you about the future of Hartwell Technologies. But first, I need to tell you about the past, about a coward who ran from love and built an empire on fear. Margaret rose beside him, portfolio in hand, but no longer needing it. She remembered now the code they'd written together in both timelines, the solutions that transcended realities. And I need to show you what happens when broken people choose to become whole, when companies choose conscience, when love drives innovation instead of greed. Emma sat cross-legged on the table, watching Davidson's face cycle through confusion to rage to terror as he realized the implications. The quiet people had been keeping records indeed, of everything, in every timeline. The real presentation was about to begin, not a quarterly projections or profit margins, but a possibility itself, of what humanity could achieve when its children could see between seconds, and its adults remembered how to love. Board members leaned forward, drawn by something they couldn't name. The merger of timelines had touched them too, leaving them hungry for meaning they'd forgotten to seek. 3 broken people stood before 14 judges, ready to reshape reality with nothing but truth and code and the bridge of an impossible. Child, the spring recital of redemption had begun. Davidson broke first, his voice cracking like ice. This is insane. You can't seriously expect us to believe. He stopped, hand flying to his throat. The words he'd stolen with the money were suddenly choking him, literally. The quiet people don't like thieves, Emma observed mildly, especially ones who steal futures. Board members watched in horror as Davidson gasped, eyes bulging. With each breath, numbers appeared in the air above him, every dollar embezzled, every life ruined by his greed, every child whose program lost funding. To line his pockets, help him, Dr. Patricia Wong, the newest board member, started to rise. He's helping himself, Emma corrected. Truth coming out hurts, but lies festering inside kill. Davidson finally screamed a sound that carried the weight of confession. $3.7 million. I took it from the Children's Coding Initiative. More numbers poured out. Hidden accounts, bribes, a web of corruption that touched half the board. 6 members stood abruptly, faces pale. They'd all taken Davidson's money, participated in his schemes. The quiet people's accounting was comprehensive and merciless. Sit. James commanded with new authority. Both timelines had given him perspective. He saw now how he'd let wolves guard his sheep. to focus on his own guilt, to notice theirs. You'll face justice, but first, you'll hear what you almost destroyed. Margaret stepped forward, but instead of presenting algorithms, she pulled out a battered notebook. This was Emma's first drawing, age 2. Look at it. Board members leaned in, expecting childish scribbles. Instead, they saw complex patterns that made their eyes water. Neural networks drawn in crayon, quantum equations in finger paint, a child's prediction of market trends that had proved accurate to the decimal. My daughter sees what we've trained ourselves to ignore: connections, consequences, the weight of choices rippling outward. Margaret's voice carried both timelines. Wisdom. Every product we create changes lives. Every algorithm shapes thought. We have the power of gods and the wisdom of infants. What are you proposing? Dr. Wong asked, genuinely curious despite the chaos. Emma answered by gesturing to the windows. The Seattle skyline wavered, showing not what was but what could be. Hartwell Technologies building transformed, no longer a sterile tower, but a hive of innovation. Children learned beside adults. Artists collaborated with engineers. The city itself grew greener, cleaner, more connected. We stop pretending technology is neutral. Stop building for profit alone. Start asking what our code does to human hearts. Emma pulled out more drawings, these fresh from the space between seconds. Look, see what the quiet people see. Each image showed consequence chains. A social media algorithm designed for engagement that led to teen suicide. A efficiency app that destroyed small businesses. An AI that learned bias from biased data. Perpetuating injustice at digital speed. But also, Emma flipped pages. This, new visions. Code that detected depression before symptoms showed. Platforms that connected isolated elderly to loving communities. I that identified and corrected its own biases. Technology as healing force, not hidden harm. Impossible. One of the clean board members muttered. The market won't support. The market is dying. James interrupted. Look at our projections. Not the sanitized ones you usually see. The real ones. He pulled up holographic displays, another gift from the timeline merger. Hartwell Technologies had 5 years before complete. Collapsed, the public was waking up, demanding ethical tech. Companies clinging to old models would fossilize. But if we pivot now, if we lead instead of follow, if we build with conscience, the projections shifted, showing exponential growth, not just in profits, but in real value, lives saved, communities connected, potential realized. You're asking. You is to gamble everything on feelings. Davidson wheezed, finally able to speak. No, Margaret said, we're asking you to remember why you started, before stock options and corner offices. When you believed technology could make the world better, one by one, board members felt it, the timeline merger's gift. Memories of their younger selves, idealistic and eager, the excitement of first code compiling, the dream of digital democracy, hope, before cynicism calcified around their hearts. I remember, Dr. Wong whispered, I wanted to connect refugee families, help them find each other across borders. When did I stop caring about that? When Davidson convinced you caring didn't pay, Emma said simply, but the quiet people keep accounts differently. They measure in healed hearts, not hoarded wealth. The room grew warm as possibility filled it. Even the corrupted board members felt something stir, not redemption perhaps, but recognition of what they lost. Call the vote, James said. Stay with the old model and guarantee extinction, or evolve with us and maybe, just maybe, remember what it feels like to build something beautiful. 14 hands would rise or fall, but in the space between seconds, Emma saw the outcome, saw her parents leading together, saw children learning to code with conscience, saw technology's redemption through love's intervention. The patterns were converging exactly as the quiet people had whispered. All that remained was for humans to choose hope over habit. The most difficult question of all, did they still remember how to dream? Chapter 10. The map of the heart vote was unanimous. Even Davidson, weeping openly now as truth poured from him like pus from a lance wound, raised his trembling hand. The quiet people had shown them all the weight of unmade choices, and none could bear returning to willful blindness. Motion carried, James announced, his voice strange with merged timelines. Hartwell Technologies officially pivots to conscious computing, effective immediately. But Emma wasn't done. She pulled out one final drawing, not from her backpack or the space between seconds, but from her heart itself. The paper materialized between her small hands, glowing with inner light. This is the map, she said simply, of how we heal the world. Board members leaned forward despite themselves. The drawing showed neural pathways, but not of a single brain of civilization itself, nodes of light connected by threads of code, pulsing with digital heartbeats, and at each intersection, a child sat, translating between human need and technological possibility. The Children's Council, Emma explained, kids from everywhere, foster homes, refugee camps, suburbs, slums, all seeing problems adults miss, all coding solutions with conscience. Children can't. Someone started. I'm 5 and I froze time. Emma interrupted. Maybe update your assumptions. Dr. Wong laughed, the first genuine joy heard in this boardroom. In years, she has a point. What would this council do? Exactly. Margaret took over, her voice blending both timelines' expertise. Review every product before launch, not for market viability, but for human impact. Ask questions like, will this connect or isolate, heal or harm, elevate or exploit? We'd be giving children veto power over billion-dollar projects? Davidson's replacement as CFO looked ill. Yes, James said firmly, because children still remember. What we've forgotten is some things matter more than money, that technology should serve humanity, not consume it. Emma walked to each board member, touching their hands. Where she touched, visions bloomed not of profit projections, but of lives changed. A suicidal teenager saved by an AI that noticed linguistic patterns of despair. An elderly man reconnected with his estranged son through VR that bridged geographic distance. A refugee child learning to code, eventually creating apps that helped other displaced families navigate new countries. The quiet people want to make a deal, Emma announced when she'd touched them all. They'll help bridge realities, give our products the wisdom of paths not taken, show us consequences before they manifest. But there's always a but, James murmured. But we have to let the children lead, really lead. Not token youth panels or advisory roles. Real power, real voices, real change. Emma's eyes held stars. The quiet people say humanity's at a crossroads. Choose control, and technology becomes the cage that kills you. Choose trust, and children become the bridge to something beautiful. What about shareholders? Someone asked weekly, stock prices, quarterly reports. Emma pulled up holographic projections with a gesture that belonged to no 5-year-old. The images showed the futures diverging from this moment. In one, Hartwell Technologies maintained traditional metrics, pleased shareholders, and died within 5 years as conscious consumers abandoned soulless tech. In the other, my God, Dr. Wong breathed. The second future showed Hartwell Technologies becoming something unprecedented, not just a company, but a movement. Stock prices that soared not, despite ethical choices, but because of them. A generation of children learning that code could be compassion, that innovation meant healing, that technology's highest purpose was connecting hearts across impossible distances. The quiet people say this is the last offer, Emma said softly. After today, the timelines separate permanently. No more bridges, no more chances. Choose now. Margaret took James's hand. I know my choice. I've seen what we can build together. Felt it across realities. Our daughter opened the door, but we have to walk through it. James nodded, then addressed the board with newfound authority. All in favor of establishing the Children's Council as our highest decision-making body. One by one, hands rose. Even those who'd taken Davidson's bribes, perhaps especially them, yearned for redemption. The vote carried 14-0. Emma clapped her hands once. The sound echoed strangely, rippling through dimensions. Board members gasped as they felt it, the timelines merging more fully. Not completely, never completely, but enough to carry wisdom between worlds. It's done, Emma announced. The pattern is set. The healing begins. But even as she spoke, her small form flickered. The effort of bridging realities was taking its toll. She'd been running on quiet people's energy since dawn, and even impossible children had limits. Emma, Margaret caught her as she swayed. Baby, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Emma murmured, exhaustion making her sound exactly as young as she was. Everything's finally right. The quiet people are celebrating. Can you hear them? And for the first time, everyone in the room could. Whispers of possibility, songs of futures being born, the sound of humanity's children reclaiming tomorrow from the hands of those who'd forgotten how to hope. James lifted his daughter, holding her close. Let's go home, he said, the word home encompassing not just place but people. All of us, together. As they left the boardroom, None noticed Davidson's tears had turned to light, each drop carrying away a fragment of corruption. The quiet people kept their bargains precisely. Healing had begun, one impossible choice at a time. The boardroom emptied slowly, members still shaken by what they'd witnessed. Emma had fallen asleep in James's arms, exhausted from the emotional weight of the morning, not from supernatural effort, but from being a 5-year-old who carried adult burdens too long. She needs rest, Margaret said softly, touching her daughter's forehead. No fever, just the warmth of a child who pushed herself too hard. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, can watch her while we handle the transition details. James looked down at the sleeping child, his daughter, though the words still felt foreign on his tongue. I have a couch in my office. She could rest there while we work. It was a simple offer, but Margaret heard the deeper question. Can I be part of the small moments? Not just the dramatic ones. That would be nice. She agreed. They settled Emma on the leather couch in James's corner office, covering her with his suit jacket. The little girl curled into the expensive fabric, mumbling something about making things better in her sleep. She does that, Margaret explained. Talks in her sleep about fixing things. I think it's because she's heard me worry so much. Children absorb more than we realize. James pulled the chairs near the couch, unwilling to be far from Emma. Tell me about her. Really tell me. Not the impossible things, just her. Margaret's face softened. She loves purple dinosaurs, but is terrified of butterflies. Can't sleep without checking her closet twice. Insists on cutting her own sandwiches into triangles because they taste better that way. Like you, James said without thinking. You always cut yours diagonally at Stanford. You remember that. I remember everything. He reached into his desk drawer, pulling out a small velvet box, including promises I should have kept. Inside lay a simple silver bracelet, nothing like the elaborate sterling heirloom. This one held 3 charms, an M, an E, and a tiny heart. I bought this years ago, he admitted. Had it engraved, but could never. Margaret, I know I have no right to ask, but would you consider letting me try? Not just with Emma, but with you. Margaret studied the bracelet, then the man offering it. 8 years had changed them both. She was stronger. He was humbler. Maybe that was what they needed to become. I'm not the girl you left at Stanford. I'm not the boy who ran. Maybe that's why we might work now. Emma stirred, eyes fluttering. Open. Are you talking about feelings? Mrs. Chen says that's good for hearts. Very smart lady. James agreed. How are you feeling? Sweetheart, hungry and happy. And like maybe we could have dinner together. All 3 of us. She looked between her parents hopefully. Not fancy, just together. Margaret fingered the bracelet. Such a simple thing. Yet it represented everything complicated between them. You hurt us, James. Deeply. I know. It won't be easy. Trust takes time to rebuild. I know that too. And Emma comes first. Always. She should have from the beginning. Emma sat up. Wise beyond her years, but still achingly young. Mommy, remember what you tell me about second chances. How everyone deserves them if they really mean to change. Margaret laughed, caught by her own teachings. Using my words against me, not against. For Emma patted the couch between them. For us being a real family. Finally, Margaret slipped on the bracelet. It was lighter than promises, heavier than hope. Dinner, but somewhere Emma likes. And you're buying. McDonald's, Emma cheered. They have a playground. James Hartwell, who dined with senators and CEOs, found himself genuinely smiling at the prospect of fast food with his family. His real fortune sat on this couch, not in stock options or corporate victories, but in a second chance he'd never dared dream of. McDonald's it is, he agreed, and maybe, if you're very good, ice cream after. Daddy knows about bribes, Emma informed her mother seriously. That's okay. Sometimes good bribes fix things too. As they prepared to leave, James canceling afternoon meetings without hesitation. Margaret calling Mrs. Chen to say they'd be late. Emma chattering about her favorite playground equipment. None of them noticed the janitor in the hallway. Harold had worked at Hartwell Technologies for 15 years. He'd seen the young CEO build walls higher each year, becoming colder with every success. Today, watching him carry a little girl who looked just like him, listening to him laugh at something the child whispered. Harold saw something he thought impossible. James Hartwell was becoming human again. Love did that sometimes, especially when delivered by a 5-year-old who simply refused to accept that broken things couldn't be mended. The empire could wait. Happy Meals and healing couldn't. Seattle's rain began as they left McDonald's, Emma's Happy Meal toy clutched. In one hand, her parents' intertwined fingers in the other. The normalcy lasted exactly 47 steps before the child stopped abruptly. Her green eyes unfocusing. They're crying, she whispered. Margaret knelt immediately, mother's instinct flaring. Who's crying, baby? The other children. In the building. They've been waiting so long for someone to see them. Emma pointed at the Hartwell Technologies tower looming through the rain. Daddy's company has their voices trapped in the walls. James felt ice in his veins. Emma, what do you mean? The quiet people showed me during the meeting. While you were feeling all the hurt stuff, her small face scrunched in concentration. There's a room, down below, where Mr. Davidson keeps his special projects. Margaret and James exchanged glances. Davidson's special projects had always been off limits, protected by NDA letters and biometric locks that even James couldn't override. How many children? James asked, though part of him didn't want to know. Emma counted on her fingers, then shook her head. More than my fingers, more than my toes. They're not here, but their voices are, their pictures, she struggled for words, their digital souls. The rain intensified. James made a decision that would have seemed insane this morning, but now felt inevitable. Show me. They re-entered the building, security nodding at the CEO, who just canceled everything to take his daughter for nuggets. The executive elevator descended past the lobby, past the parking garage, to sub-level 3, a floor that shouldn't exist on any building plans. How do you know about this level? Margaret asked. I had suspicions. James admitted. Davidson always had too much autonomy, too many locked budgets. But I was to focus on my own guilt to investigate. The elevator opened to a sterile hallway. Emma led them forward with disturbing certainty, past doors marked with project codes that meant nothing, until they reached one that made James's. Blood freeze, project inheritance, authorized personnel only. That's where the crying is loudest. Emma said simply. James's override codes worked barely. The door hissed open, revealing a room that belonged in a dystopian film. Walls of servers hummed, their lights blinking like electronic heartbeats. But it was the displays that stole breath. Children's faces filled every screen, hundreds of them, each with data scrolling beside their images, genetic profiles, behavioral predictions, family histories, market values. My God, Margaret breathed. He was cataloging children. James found the main terminal, his coding skills finally useful for something that mattered. It's worse. He was creating profiles for potential buyers, wealthy families who wanted specific traits, athletic ability, musical talent, intelligence markers, like a shopping catalog. Margaret said, horror dawning, for children. Emma walked between the servers, her hand trailing along their cases, where she touched. The humming changed pitch, harmonizing into something almost like singing. No, I can hear them. They've been waiting for someone who could hear. This is evidence, James said, downloading everything onto secure drives. This proves Davidson wasn't just embezzling. He was running a black market adoption ring, targeting specific children based on desired traits. But where are the actual children? Margaret asked. Emma pointed to a wall that looked solid. Behind, there, the quiet people say there's a door. It opens with sadness. Opens with sadness? James stared at the wall, then understanding hit. Biometric locks can use any input. Fingerprints, retinas, or emotional states. Davidson, that sick bastard, keyed it to detect genuine distress. Margaret was already moving. Then let's give it some. She stood before the wall and let 8 years of pain surface. Every night Emma had asked about her daddy, every skipped meal so her baby could eat, every dream deferred for survival. Tears came freely, not performed, but pulled from deep wells of truth. The wall clicked. A section swung inward. Beyond lay not a prison, but a pristine facility, play areas, small bedrooms, educational stations, and children, 12 of them, ranging from 3 to 10, all bearing the hollow look of those who'd forgotten hope. Are you here to buy us? The oldest asked, voice carefully neutral. No, Emma said firmly, walking forward. We're here to take you home, your real homes, to families who've been searching for you. They said our families sold us, that nobody wanted us because we were broken. A boy, maybe 7, wouldn't meet their eyes. They lied. Margaret said gently, the way people lie when they want to use you. Your families never stop looking. James was already on his phone, calling contacts. he'd never thought to use for good. FBI, state police, child services, the clean departments, not Davidson's corrupted contacts. This is James Hartwell. I need immediate assistance at my building. We found the missing children, all of them. The next hours blurred. Officials descended like an army of angels. Davidson, arrested at his home, broke completely when confronted with evidence. The children each reported missing over the past 3 years. Each perfect in some marketable way were reunited with families who'd never given up hope. Emma sat in the center of it all, a bridge between trauma and healing. She knew which child needed which adult, guiding reunions with uncanny accuracy. How does she know? A social worker asked Margaret. She listens, Margaret said simply, with more than her ears. As dawn broke over Seattle, the last child, the boy who'd asked if they were buyers, found his grandmother. She'd driven through the night from Portland, had never believed the police who'd said he'd run away. My sweet boy, she sobbed, holding him. I knew you didn't leave us. I knew. Emma tugged James's sleeve. The quiet people are happy now. The crying stopped. Did we fix it? He asked his impossible daughter. We started fixing it, she corrected. There are more rooms. In other buildings. In other cities. The pattern is big. James looked at Margaret, saw his own determination reflected. They'd stumbled into something vast and vile, but they'd also discovered they could fight it. That we keep going, Margaret said. All of us. 3 weeks after the discovery, Margaret stood in her childhood bedroom in Portland, packing the last box. Her mother, Linda Morrison, watched from the doorway with lips pursed in familiar disapproval. You're making a mistake, Linda said for the 100th time. That man abandoned you. Abandoned Emma. Now you're going to Playhouse because he's rich. Margaret folded Emma's drawings carefully. Pictures of 3 figures holding hands, labeled my family in careful kindergarten letters. It's not about money, Mom. Then what? Love. Linda's laugh was bitter. I loved your father. Look where that got me. Margaret finally turned to face her mother. Really looked at her, 63 years old. Alone by choice, armor belt so thick, no warmth could penetrate. That's the difference between us. Dad leaving broke you. You decided loving again was too dangerous, but James leaving broke me into someone stronger. Naive girl. He'll hurt you again, maybe, or maybe people can change. Maybe broken people can choose healing instead of hiding. Margaret sealed the box. Emma deserves the chance to know her father. I deserve the chance to see if what we had can become something better. Through the window, she could see James loading boxes into the U-Haul while Emma helped by carrying her stuffed animals one at a time. He'd taken 3 weeks off the first vacation in his company's history to help them move. The children you found, Linda said suddenly. The news said Emma helped. She did more than help. She knew exactly where they were, knew which child belonged to which family. Margaret studied her mother. She has a gift, Mom, for seeing what others miss, for hearing what others can't, like you did. Before I taught you to be practical. The words hung between them in almost apology, the closest Linda Morrison could come to admitting error. I need her to keep that gift, Margaret said softly, even if it's not practical, especially then. Emma burst through the door, clutching Mr. Hoot. Grandma, Daddy says we can paint my new room any color, even rainbow if I want. Linda's stern face cracked slightly. She'd never been warm, but Emma had a way of melting even permafrost. Rainbows fade, child. Choose something sensible. But fading things could be repainted, Emma said seriously. Daddy told me. He says nothing has to stay broken or faded if you're willing to do the work. James appeared in the doorway, hesitant. He and Linda had spoken exactly once, a frigid phone call 8 years ago when he tried to explain why he was leaving. It hadn't gone well. Mrs. Morrison, he said carefully. Mr. Sterling. Ice could have formed between them. Emma looked back and forth, then marched to her grandmother and took her hand. The quiet people say you're scared to, like Daddy was, like Mommy was. But scared is just love with nowhere safe to go. Linda stared at the child. Who tells you these things? They do. The ones who watch, the ones who remember. Emma tugged her grandmother toward James. They say you loved someone who made beautiful music before he left. Before you decided silence was safer. Linda went white. She'd never told anyone about the musician she'd loved at 19. The one who'd chosen fame over family. The one whose leaving had set the pattern for every relationship after. How could you possibly? Because pain echoes, Emma said simply. In families, in hearts. until someone chooses different. She pulled both adults' hands until they were forced to shake. There. Now the echo has a new sound. The handshake was awkward, brief, but it was contact, the first step in what might, maybe, become something like peace. You'll visit. Margaret asked her mother. Emma needs her grandmother. Perhaps. Seattle isn't so far. Linda cleared her throat. And someone should ensure you're not being entirely impractical. It was as close to a blessing as they'd get. Margaret hugged her mother, feeling the rigid form slowly, carefully return the embrace. As they pulled away from the house, Emma waving enthusiastically at her grandmother, James reached over and took Margaret's hand. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for choosing this. Choosing us. I'm not choosing you," Margaret corrected, but squeezed his hand to soften the words. "I'm choosing to see who we might become. There's a difference. Still, it's more than I deserve." The quiet people say deserving is a silly concept, Emma piped up from her car seat. "They say we get what we're brave enough to accept, and Mommy's the bravest person ever." "What about me?" James asked, mock offended. "You're learning brave. That's harder than being born with it." Emma yawned, the emotion and excitement catching up. "Wake me when we're home. Home." The word settled over them like a benediction. Not just a place, but a possibility. Three people choosing to build something from the rubble of what had been. Margaret watched Portland fade in the mirrors. Behind them, Linda Morrison stood at her window, one hand raised in farewell. For the first time in 40 years, she looked like she might be considering the possibility that some chances were worth taking twice. The rain started as they reached the highway, but inside the car, Emma slept peacefully between her parents, her quiet people finally, truly quiet. Their work, for now, was done. The choosing, the building, the becoming that was human work. And it had already begun. The new house in Queen Anne stood empty except for boxes and possibility. Emma raced through rooms, her footsteps echoing on hardwood floors, while Margaret and James stood in what would be the living room, overwhelmed by the blank slate before them. "It's too big," Margaret said quietly. "We don't need for bedrooms. One for us, one for Emma, one for an office," and James hesitated. "Maybe someday, a nursery." The words hung between them, fragile as spun glass. They'd been sharing a bed for 2 weeks now, but planning future children felt monumentally presumptuous. Emma skidded back into the room. "Can we plant a garden?" The quiet people say gardens help families grow. Metaphorically and literally. Metaphorically, James raised an eyebrow. "That's a big word for 5. Almost 6, Emma corrected. "My birthday's in 3 weeks, and words are just sounds that carry meaning. Size doesn't matter." Margaret laughed. "She's got you there. A garden sounds perfect. Baby, what should we plant?" Emma pulled out a crumpled paper from her pocket. She always had papers in her pockets. Drawings and lists and maps of impossible things. Tomatoes for Daddy because he needs to eat healthier. Flowers for Mommy because she loves colors. And a tree for our family, one that grows with us. They spent the afternoon at the nursery, Emma charming the staff while selecting plants with the seriousness of a landscape architect. She chose cherry tomatoes, easier to share, wildflowers there, tough like Mommy, and finally stood before the tree selection with grave consideration. "That one," she pointed to a small oak. "It's little now, like our family, but it'll grow strong." "Oak trees take decades to mature," the nursery worker warned. "Perfect," Emma said. "So do families." Back home, they worked together in the backyard. James, who'd never held a shovel, learned to dig proper holes. Margaret, who'd killed every houseplant she'd owned, carefully replanting instructions. Emma supervised with the confidence of someone guided by invisible advisors. Deeper, Daddy. Roots need room to spread. Gentler, Mommy. Plants feel it when you're nervous. As the sun began setting, they stood back to survey their work. The garden looked sparse. Fragile tiny plants in dark soil. The oak sapling held, up by stakes. "It doesn't look like much," James admitted. "Neither did we this morning." Margaret pointed out. "Empty house, boxes everywhere. But look now, Emma's drawings on the refrigerator, your coffee maker setup. Our shoes mixed together by the door. We're making it home." Emma nodded sagely. "The quiet people say everything important starts invisible. Love, trust. Gardens, you. Plant what you can't see and wait for it to show itself." She grabbed the hose, watering their new plants with careful attention. "There, now they know they're wanted." That's the most important part. That evening, as they ate takeout on the living Room floor, the dining table still in pieces, Emma pulled out another paper. This one was a drawing of their house, but wrong, it showed vines covering the walls. The oak tree massive and sheltering, stick figures of various sizes playing in its shade. Is that the future? Margaret asked. One of them, Emma said. The quiet people showed me different ones. This is the one where we all choose to stay, where the garden grows, where more children play under the tree, more children. James's voice was carefully neutral. Emma looked at him with those two knowing eyes. The ones you'll help save, the ones you'll bring into the company to change things, and maybe. She glanced between her parents, one or two that grow here first. Margaret felt heat in her cheeks. Emma, that's not something you should. The Hart sisters would like to exist, Emma interrupted. They're waiting in the possibility space, but only if you both heal enough to hold them safely. The silence stretched, filled with unspoken fears and tentative hopes. Then James cleared his throat. Hart sisters, plural, twins, Emma confirmed cheerfully. But not for 3 years. You need practice with just me first. She yawned then, the day catching up with her, as Margaret carried her to her new room walls. Still white, but covered in Emma's artwork. James followed with Mr. Hoot and the growing collection of stuffed friends. Twins, he murmured, in 3 years. You can't actually believe a month ago. I didn't believe in anything. Now, he gestured at their daughter, already half asleep, but still mumbling about paint colors and garden plans. Now I believe in everything she says, especially the impossible parts. They tucked Emma in together, a routine still new enough to feel miraculous. As they stood in her doorway, watching her settle into dreams, Margaret felt that the invisible seeds taking root, trust, hope, the terrifying possibility of happiness. The garden's going to be beautiful, she whispered. Yes, James agreed. And they both knew they weren't talking about plants. Outside, a light rain began to fall. In the backyard, tiny leaves reached toward the sky, the oak saplings standing straight. Despite the weather, everything important did start invisible, but with patience, with care, with choosing to nurture what couldn't yet be seen, gardens grew, families healed. Love found its way back to soil it had once abandoned. The quiet people, for once, had nothing to add. The humans were doing just fine on their own. Emma's 6th birthday dawned clear and bright, unusual for Seattle in March. The house that had been empty boxes 3 weeks ago now hung with live streamers hung from doorways. The smell of James's first attempt at homemade cake filled the air, slightly burned, but made with love, and Margaret put finishing touches on decorations. She's still sleeping, James whispered, coffee mug in hand. Should we wake her, let her sleep? She was up late talking to her quiet people about birthday wishes that changed the world. Margaret smiled. Besides, the other children won't arrive until noon. The other children were the 12 they rescued from Davidson's facility. Their families had stayed in touch, forming an unexpected support network. Today would be their first gathering since the night everything changed. I'm nervous, James admitted. What if they blame me? It was my company, my oversight failure. Stop. Margaret took his face in her hands. You saved them. We saved them. That's what matters. Emma appeared in the doorway, hair wild with sleep, Mr. Hoot dragging behind her. The quiet people say birthdays are timeline convergence points, where all the possibilities celebrate together. Good morning to you two, birthday girl. James laughed, scooping her up. What would you like for breakfast? Pancakes. Triangle. Once. She wiggled down, running to the window. Oh, the garden, overnight. Something impossible had happened. The struggling plants they'd set just weeks ago had bloomed magnificently. Tomatoes hung heavy on vines, wildflowers carpeted the beds, and the oak sapling that hadn't grown taller, but something about it seemed more present, more permanent. Magic? Emma asked hopefully. Seattle miracle spring weather, Margaret said. Practically, but her eyes met James's with shared wonder. The doorbell rang at exactly noon. Not one family, but all 12, carrying dishes and gifts and children who'd been given back their futures. The house filled with voices, laughter, the chaos of healing in progress. Miss Emma. 7-year-old Marcus, named for Hope, his grandmother said, ran to hug her. I drew you something. One by one, the rescued children presented drawings to Emma. Not typical kid art, these held the weight of gratitude, of understanding that this little girl has somehow been the key to their freedom. We call her the bridge, one mother explained. The Margaret, between what was taken and what was restored. All our children dream of her sometimes. They say she teaches them to listen to the quiet spaces. During cake time, James's second attempt, much better, Emma stood on a chair, addressing her guest with unusual formality. "I'm 6 now," she announced. "That's old enough to tell you something important. The quiet people aren't just mine. They're everyone's. They live in the spaces between heartbeats, in the pause before words. They remember everything, every choice, every path, every possibility." The adults exchanged glances, unsure how to respond to philosophy from a kindergartner. "But here's the secret," Emma continued. "They can only help if we help each other. They brought us together, but we have to choose to stay together, to build something better than what was broken." She looked at the rescued children. "You 12 are special, not because of what those bad people wanted to sell, but because you survived, because you remember both darkness and light. You can help other lost children find their way home." Then to the adults, "And you have to let them. Stop thinking children are too young to understand or help. We see things you've trained yourselves to ignore." Finally, to her parents, "And you have to stop being scared of being happy. The quiet people are tired of whispering courage to you. Just choose it already." Nervous laughter rippled through the room, but it was warm, accepting. The strange, wise child had saved their babies. If she wanted to make birthday speeches about invisible advisors and choosing joy, they listened. "One more thing," Emma said. "We're starting something, all of us. A network of families who know what it's like to almost lose everything, who'll help other families still searching. The quiet people call it the Bridge Foundation. And Daddy's going to fund it, and Mommy's going to run it, and all of you are going to help build it." "When did we decide this?" James whispered to Margaret. "Apparently just now." She whispered back, but she was smiling, because of course this was right. Of course their strange journey led here. The party continued into evening. Parents exchanged numbers, shared resources, began planning. The rescued children played with Emma, their movements slowly losing the careful hesitation of those who learned not to trust. As sunset painted the sky, the families gathered in the backyard. The garden that had impossibly bloomed seemed to glow in golden light. Emma stood by the oak sapling, one hand on its slim trunk. "Make a wish, baby." Margaret encouraged. Emma closed her eyes, but she wasn't wishing. She was listening. To the quiet people, yes, but also to the sound of children laughing, parents connecting, a future being built from the ashes of trauma. "I wish," she said loudly, "for this to be just the beginning." She blew out her candles. 6 flames extinguished, but something brighter ignited hope, spreading from family to family, child to child, heart to healing heart. Later, as guests departed with promises to meet next week, to start planning, to build this bridge together, Emma sat between her parents. On the porch swing James had installed that morning. "Good birthday?" he asked. "The best. Because everyone's choosing brave now," she yawned. 6 years old catching up with her. "The quiet people are happy. They say their work here is almost done." "Almost?" Margaret asked. "Well, there's still the twins to arrange, and the other offices to clean out, and about 300 more children to find. But yeah, almost." She snuggled between them. "We did good, didn't we? We did good." James agreed. The oak tree stood sentinel in the garden, surrounded by impossible blooms. 3 people on a swing, building a life from broken pieces. 12 families forming a network of hope, hundreds more waiting to be found and freed. It was a beginning disguised as an ending, which the quiet people knew were the very best kind. Love had built its bridge. Now it was time to help others cross.